Hi everyone, Rob B here with Rob D, and you are listening to episode 247 of the Property Podcast. And this week we're playing the Regeneration game. Hey!
Yes, indeed. We have been all around the country, virtually at least, finding all the main regeneration projects that you need to know about. Some absolutely massive, others smaller but still very significant. We'll be rounding up all of those and letting you know how to take advantage of them. On top of that, we've got a news story as ever, and we've got a resource of the week that describes itself on its website as basically free money. Sounds good to me.
I think that will help people listen to the end. Of course, we're going to squeeze in plenty of good stuff in between. But before we get going with our main topic, just a quick heads up. It's Thursday. It's the first Thursday of the month as this goes out, if you're listening to this podcast on the day it goes out, which can only mean, yes, it's meetups time. It's the Christmas meetups, the December meetups. They're always good fun, they're always festive, and they're always friendly. They're always friendly whatever month of the year, to be honest, but it's worth going. If you're listening to this morning, you've not been to one, or you're on the fence, should I do it? Should I go Christmas shopping? Forget the Christmas shopping. That's why they created the internet. You can do that at home in your pyjamas. Get along to a meetup, be social, and have fun.
Yep, if you haven't got your space booked yet, or you don't know where your local meetup is, then all you need to do is go to thepropertyhub.net/meetups, get yourself booked on, it's completely free, and a fun time is pretty much guaranteed.
So Rob, our news story of the week, and there's kind of two parts to this news story. It's on the BBC website, and we'll link to it in the show notes, where you can find them at thepropertyhub.net/regeneration. But the headline of this news story is 4,000 landlords letting illegally. Rob, tell us more.
Yeah, shocker. This is to do with the Rent Smart Wales scheme. So this is the licensing scheme that's been operational for a little while now in Wales, which means that all landlords and all letting agencies need to register with a centralised scheme in order to be able to let property. So various different licensing schemes are coming in across different areas. In some, it's only HMOs. In others, such as Liverpool, for example, you need to have a license to let any kind of property at all. So it's the kind of thing that's not very well publicised always. So if you're newer to property investment, this might not be something that you know about. If you're using a letting agent, make sure that they know about it. And if you're self-managing, do a bit of Googling and make sure that there's no scheme operating in your area that you're unaware of. If you're in Wales, really straightforward. The whole of Wales needs to be licensed under this Rent Smart Wales scheme. So I'll say something positive about it before we rip this story up a bit. The positive thing is that they've now got 86,238 landlords registered, which is pretty good going for a short period of time. We at Yellow Lettings manage properties in Wales, therefore we are registered as an agent. It means that you have to send them a load of stuff to prove that you're doing things properly. You need to do some training, all that kind of thing. Our team's been through it and it's not as bad as we feared it might be. But here's where it gets a bit silly, Rob. The story is almost 4,000 landlords are still letting illegally because they've got 86,000 landlords registered. They've estimated that there are 90,000 in total. Therefore, that means that there are 4,000 landlords letting illegally because they're not signed up. But this 90,000 is just a complete guess.
It is, because they previously estimated, plucked out the air, that there were 130,000 landlords in Wales. But Rent Smart Wales have said that this was an overestimate. And now there are thought to be about 90,000, which is remarkably close to the number of people they've signed up. It's amazing how close that number is. You could say, Rob, it could be more than a coincidence that the number they've re-estimated is right near the work levels they've done. Incredible stuff.
Funny that, isn't it? So, yeah, it seems a bit convenient that they've just revised things down. But this really seems to me to be the flaw with all of these kind of schemes. A lot of people will sign up because they have to. But the ones who don't sign up are probably the ones who aren't doing their job properly in the first place. Therefore, they'll continue to be under the radar because why would they put their hand up for something like this? And that there's currently no way to track people down. So this is where licensing schemes come in for a lot of stick. It seems to be another way of making money out of the good landlords, but the bad ones still don't register. So I don't really know what the answer is to any of that, but I just thought it was funny how they changed their own estimate to make it look like they've done really well.
It's like they've used selective data to make their point come across better. Who would have thought, Rob? Who would have thought? And on a completely separate note, make sure you listen to our predictions episode in a few weeks' time where we won't do the same. Honest.
All right, so you'll have heard Rob B drop the F-bomb many times on this podcast. That's fundamentals, of course. We know how important fundamentals are for an area, and something that really improves the fundamentals of an area, of course, is investment. New investment in an area means increasing population, new employers, better leisure facilities, better transport, all of which make an area a more desirable property investment location. But what counts as a regeneration project that's big enough to make a difference? You're hearing about projects all the time, but which are the ones that are going to really move the needle? Well, what we've done this week is pick the big cities where there are the biggest of the big projects going on. We're going to talk you through some of those. And we've also identified some smaller locations where there are also projects going on that aren't quite as eye-catching. You won't be hearing about them on the national news, but still, given the size of the area, they're still going to make a big difference.
And then once we've given you all this knowledge and you can show off at dinner parties in the future, we're going to look at why this matters to you. And most importantly, what can you do to take advantage of all this knowledge? But let's start with number one on our list. And I think, Rob, people may have heard us mention this little hamlet before, Manchester.
Yeah, hopefully people have got the impression by now that there's a thing or two going on up in Manchester. It's an area that we are keen on for investment, but they might not be aware of the specific projects that are going on that makes it so exciting. So let's put that right.
Okay, so let's do that. So we're going to rattle through some of them, some of the big ones. There's plenty more, but here just gives you a flavour. So the first on the list, we've got Manchester Airport Super Terminal, a £1 billion plus project, dubbed as the biggest single construction project ever to take place in Greater Manchester. Lots going on here. Two of the terminals are being merged. One's been extended. It will mean faster check-in. It will mean more flights. It will also mean HS2 will be stopping at Manchester Airport as well. That's not included in that financial figure. But that'll mean journey times from Manchester Airport to London will drop down to an hour with HS2, which many of the airports that call themselves London airports so that are the same distance. So that's huge. We've got Media City in Salford. Many people would have heard of Media City. That's where the BBC relocated to. It's gone under a little bit of an expansion, a £1 billion expansion, so much so that they're doubling the size of Media City. Already 7,000 people are employed there, 3,000 from the BBC, 900 from ITV. A hugely impressive regen project in its own right when it was first done, but that's being doubled. Back to Manchester Airport, 800 million there now, just outside the airport, which is being called Airport City, which is an enterprise zone that the government's created, which is dragging in investment, particularly from the Far East, with multiple businesses expected to be on site, 20,000 people to be expected to be employed in this area once it's done, multiple hotels, obviously all the offices that need to be built for that, shops, bar, restaurants, all the transport logistics you'd expect. That's all happening there, and probably because HS2 station being close by is probably one of the driver points behind it. Another one you may not have heard of, the Mayfield Depot, an £850 million project, again, in Manchester. That's going to create another 7,500 jobs, according to the people behind the project. Thousands of homes, hotels, office space, you name it, it's got it going on. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with Manchester. You know, that just gives you a flavour, but the smallest project there was 800 million. You know, there's multiple projects that are going on there that is just absolutely huge, and any one of those could make a difference to the city on its own, but have them all happening pretty much at the same time is going to make Manchester even more appealing. So Rob, Manchester, lots going on, and people have probably expected us to name Manchester, but hold on to your hats, people. We're going to go to the south.
Not just the south, we're going to London. London, the place that we've been deriding. Well, not deriding, but we've been saying that there are so many better opportunities out there. We've been talking about how London is very, very expensive, which isn't news to you, but we've been talking about how there are so many more appealing investment areas at this stage of the cycle, in our opinion. But as we've also been careful to say whenever we're talking about London, we're not saying that it's a rubbish place. We're not saying you should never invest there. And there's actually lots of things going on. So a strategic investment in London, if it suits your goals, could work quite nicely. If not now, then at some future point as some of this comes closer to fruition, because there are some big projects here. These are going to be taking a while to be complete, but when they are, they're going to make a big difference. So one of those, fairly ambitious, is the creation of an entire new area. Silvertown is somewhere you probably haven't heard of. It's over in East London, around the Docklands kind of way. Up until now, there's been basically not that much there at all. But by the time they spent $3.5 billion on it, take that Manchester, there will be 850 new homes, and that will be completed in the next 3 years apparently. There's also going to be a load of retail there, so they're trying to turn it into a real destination. And what I think is interesting is rather than just making it into another load of high rises and try to compete with Canary Wharf or something like that, they're going really heavy on the architecture. They're keeping it low rise. They're trying to make it a really exciting place to live and to be with lots of character, and not just have a load of big tall buildings and chain stores, which London has got plenty of. So that is really, really interesting. $3.5 billion, no small amount. Another one that's in its very early stages, but very interesting, is a project round Old Oak Common and Park Royal kind of way out in West London, where they're planning more than 22,000 new homes. That is a lot. And as part of that, they're planning to make it into a transport super hub. So basically put in a couple of new stations to link the area up with Crossrail and with HS2. So it's a part of London that isn't isolated, but I do know from experience that it's a little bit disconnected, and it's not as easy as it should be to get from there into central London, and it is at the moment a little bit left out from some of the big projects that are going on. So 22,000 new homes and a couple of new stations will absolutely massively revitalise that whole area. So that's a few years off. Don't have to rush to get involved in that now, but very much worth keeping an eye on. And there's more to make sure London keeps its cultural relevance and keeps lots of employment coming in on that front. There's a new film studios being built in Dagenham. Dagenham you always think of in the same breath as Hollywood, I'm sure. Well, now they're going to be trying to strengthen that association. That's the first film studios being built in London for 25 years. And another project that you've probably heard of, because it's been going on for quite a while, is the redevelopment of Battersea Power Station. More than £9 billion is being spent on that in total. It's been going on for a long time, but the first residents have now moved in. It's been very popular with overseas investors, the units that have already been released. And now lots of more things are being announced as well. So the new tube station, the Northern Line, is being extended to serve the area. That's opening in 2020. And recently Apple has announced that they're moving their London headquarters over there. So we've just picked out the biggest ones, the multi-billions, but there's no shortage of investment in London. So like I said back at the start, if you're going to pick a location generically and you're looking for growth over the next few years, there are other areas of the UK that we think are stronger. But London in the long term, because of its importance, there's always going to be lots of investment. There's loads of schemes going on, and that creates opportunities. And Rob, that's not even mentioning HS2 and Crossrail 2, which are not small projects in their own right.
No, and even the first Crossrail hasn't finished properly yet. So loads and loads of positive stuff happening in London, and you would expect that as well. And if you go back and listen to our North-South Divide podcast last week, you'll really understand that London is very good at attracting the money. But as we've seen, there are other places that can do it. Manchester, we've already listed. And our next on the list, can't believe I've been given this one, it's Liverpool. So in Liverpool, my Aunt Mary has just painted her garage, and that is going to really bring up the street. No, there's more than that, don't worry. So Liverpool, lots of projects going on. Like we said at the beginning of this feature, it's about projects that are going to move the needle, big projects. And the biggest project by far in Liverpool is Liverpool Waters. It's a project that will absolutely transform the city. A 60-hectare site to create world-class facilities, including a new sports stadium, retail, offices, thousands of homes, an absolutely huge project. They've recently opened a port up there as well. It's a £5.5 billion project that's only just started. They're only just getting into this. And the area of Liverpool where this is being spent could really do with this money as well. It's North Liverpool. So if this all plays out, it'll make a huge difference. But over the water as well, the River Mersey, you've got the Wirral, and the Wirral's got its own project by the Peel Group as well, who are behind Liverpool Waters, and that's a £4.5 billion project. Again, that project, they're very much going after the Chinese money. Two projects that are absolutely massive for the size of areas, which will make a huge impact. So definitely one to have on your radar is Liverpool.
Us talking about Manchester isn't much of a surprise. Rob talking about Liverpool isn't a surprise either. But here's one you might be a bit surprised by: Birmingham. Now, there's no reason why you should be surprised by Birmingham in general. Obviously, it's a massive city, but we've got some stick for ignoring it in the past. So let's put that right and recognise some of the big things that are going on there. This all fits in with Birmingham's Big City Plan, which they launched in 2010. It was a 20-year vision for the city where they're trying to create a world-class city centre. And you can certainly see that starting to come about. One project that you'll be aware of already is HS2. That's not going to be open until 2026, but there's already lots of development going on in the area around the station. Apparently, it's going to create a 1.4 billion economic uplift for Birmingham, and there's a few big developments going on around the station itself. There's also a project in Smithfield that's worth over £500 million. That is right in the city centre, and that's going to be creating over 2,000 new homes. So loads going on, and you can see it already. I was in Birmingham a few weeks ago for the Birmingham meetup, and it was actually really hard to get from the station to where I was trying to go to get to the venue, because basically everything is under construction. There are all these walkways between the different sites. There's cranes everywhere. There's already absolutely tons going on, and that is just the start. So it's an ambitious plan that they've got going on in Birmingham, but it's going to create lots of opportunities, not just in the developments themselves, in fact probably not predominantly in the development themselves, but all the knock-on effects of that, all the commuter areas where people are going to be travelling into all the new shops and offices that are being created, the pull of HS2 and people who are going to live near that. When thinking about these projects, I think it's worth saying it's not necessarily the projects themselves. We're not saying, oh, you should go and bag yourself a plot on one of these. It's everything that's created around it, the ripple effect that goes out. And there's so much money going into Birmingham and some of these other cities that we've mentioned that it's clear to see where the opportunity is going to be.
Absolutely. I mean, look at HSBC. They've relocated their office there, moved thousands of jobs to Birmingham because, probably in anticipation of HS2. It will make Birmingham, I don't know if the people of Birmingham will like this, but a commuter city for London. So at the very least, it can hang on to the coattails of London. But with all this regen going on, it can hopefully stand up for itself and become an important city in the UK in terms of economic growth and drive through all this investment that's going in. So really, really interesting city to watch. Now, we've named some of the big guns. Maybe you're not entirely shocked by the choices we've made. But what we're going to do now is look at some smaller towns and cities that have got plenty going on, but possibly might not be on your radar. So first up, we've got Hull. And the city centre is being regenerated. Now, Hull, you may know, in 2017 has been celebrating the capital of culture. That had a huge impact on Liverpool. And Hull, well, we'll wait and see what impact it has. But there are projects planned and underway that will make a huge difference to the area. First up on our list is a multi-million-pound redevelopment of Hull city centre itself. There's going to be a new hotel there, ice ring, shopping arcade. There's going to be a new hotel there, ice skating arena, a shopping arcade. It's really going to uplift the city centre. What's really interesting is Hull actually has a real lack of hotels in the area. If you have a look and try and book one there, there's just not much on offer. So first of all, it's a good sign that they want to build a hotel the size that they're talking about, which is 100 beds plus. And I wouldn't be surprised if more hotels followed. An even bigger project Hull is experiencing right now, though, is the level of investment that they've got in green technology. £1 billion is now being delivered across the city of what they're calling Greenport Hull. 310 million of that is the Siemens factory there, which works on the wind turbines, which you probably see more and more of right now. But because of the opportunity that the North Sea offers for green renewables, and particularly wind turbines, Hull is trying to make itself the capital of green technology. So where Aberdeen in the past has benefited from the oil industry, Hull is trying to place itself as the Aberdeen for green renewable technology. And they're attracting the money. £1 billion of investment in a city the size of Hull is huge.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. It's relative to the size of the city. So we've just been talking about 9 billion in London, 3 billion in Manchester, 1 billion in Hull, who cares? But relative to the size of Hull, that is a lot. I think it's really interesting because Hull's had a lot of bad press, but it's still a strong area. It's got a really great history, and you can really feel that history in the town centre. So if they compare that with being at the cutting edge of this new technology, that's really interesting. Along the same lines, actually, is something that's going on in Doncaster. Now, I've actually spoken to a few people recently who invest in Doncaster, and they seem to be doing really well. So sorry to them, because there could be a bit more competition now we're talking about it. This is a project where they're spending about 100 million. Again, 100 million, what's that compared to some of these others? But compared to its size, it can make a real impact. So they're spending that on something called Unity. This is a major town centre development where they're building a big transport interchange, they're building schools, they're creating 6,000 new jobs. There's going to be over 3,000 new homes. So lots going on there. but they're going big on clean energy and renewables as well. So there's a new power station there that planning permission has been granted for, and there's a recycling facility. They're trying to become one of the most advanced carbon capture and storage facilities in Europe. Now, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure what carbon capture is, but again, it's a former industrial town where they're now trying to position themselves on the cutting edge of something new, which is really interesting. But also, it's so well located geographically. It's got motorway access. It's only about 10 miles from an airport there. So it's already a strong investment area, somewhere that's probably not on your radar. But like I said, some people are doing very well there. And this is just something else to throw into the mix.
And they've got the HS2 college there as well. So plenty of good news for Doncaster. Carbon capture, Rob. It's basically just about capturing carbon.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, now you put it like that. It makes complete sense.
Moving on. An area we definitely have never mentioned before. I don't even think we've picked out many towns or the cities in this country before. Where are we talking about? Swansea. Hello, people of Swansea. We've just woken you all up. Yes, we're talking about you. Major projects going on in Swansea. And full disclosure, we didn't know until we did our research for this episode. We were simply amazed about the amount of regen that's planned for this city. Now, all in all, £6 billion is being spent across the city. Highlights of where that money's going? Well, projects include a £500 million regeneration of the St David's site, which is a mixed development site of shops, offices and residential. You've got Swansea University having £450 million spent on it and the Bay campus. You've got a huge project, which is the Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon project, which I have seen gain a bit of press because it's such a massive project. That again will create thousands of jobs and bring economic strength to the area. And not to be outdone by Swansea University, the University of Wales is also having a £300 million innovation precinct built as well. So loads going on there, and that's just a few we've selected of the overall money being spent there. So lots going on in South Wales. Maybe time to have a look that way. So we've taken you through the biggest hitters. It was a real tough job putting this list together and who to include, who to leave out. What we've done is we've picked the places that we feel the projects will have the biggest impact. But Rob, we've got a few honourable mentions because there's other areas that are seeing significant investment and maybe should be looked at as well.
Yeah, definitely. Nottingham very nearly made the cut-off for this. There's tons going on in Nottingham, so you might want to go away and research that one yourself. Also, Crewe, we've talked about before. Preston, I don't think we have talked about so much, but there's plenty going on there. And also part of Greater Manchester, but distinct from the city centre projects that we've talked about. Stockport, you should be aware of by now. We're their unofficial tourist board representatives, and Wigan as well, which is going to benefit from the HS2 effect. So if you fancy going away and doing some digging on those, you will unearth plenty of projects going on there, which again are going to make a big impact on some of those slightly smaller areas.
So there you have it. There's our list. There's our hit list, and plenty to go out there and dig into deeper, as Rob said. But what can you do with this information? And more importantly, how can you take advantage of it? Now you know about these projects, what can you do to benefit from it? Well, the first thing to understand is that not all regeneration is going to make an impact. We've touched on this a few times, but let's give you an example. A project in Manchester, that's £200 million, may sound impressive, but really, it's not going to make a difference at all. A £200 million project could just be 300 apartments going up. So while that may be a big news for somewhere like Doncaster, somewhere like Manchester, 200 million on its own isn't going to change the city. It might improve an area slightly, but it's not going to move property prices up dramatically. It's not going to create thousands of jobs. So just be careful of that. What does the number mean to that area or city? You often see cities mentioned and, oh, this has got £50 million being spent on it. Well, really? How much of an impact will that have? So judge each project on its merit and look at it in comparison to the size of the city or town you're looking at.
Yeah, and you have got to be careful with big numbers because big numbers can often sound impressive, but because these kind of projects, building anything is really expensive, it might not be as impressive as it first sounds. So case in point, the government in the last budget said they were going to allocate £1 billion to building new affordable housing, which sounds like loads, but when you think about the cost of building houses, I reckon that's going to be like 10,000 absolute maximum, even if they do that, which isn't really going to make a dent in even a single year's figures of what they need to be building. So £1 billion sounds like a lot. If you drop that into one sort of smallish town, huge impact, but across a country or across a city, not really. But some projects genuinely are huge, and when they're targeted in the right areas, they can make a massive difference. Look at East London and everything that's happened there. East London, when I was growing up, large parts of it you would just avoid. Hackney was legitimately dangerous and now is one of the most desirable areas to live. Everything that's going on with Shoreditch and all the big tech companies. Canary Wharf hasn't actually been there for all that long in the scheme of things, and it's already world famous, and there's now another stage of development going on with absolute loads of residential accommodation going in. So it is absolutely transformational, and a similar thing's going on in Manchester.
It is, and it has. Manchester hasn't always been a place that we would rave about. Go back to Manchester in the 80s. Yeah, it was a bit cool and a bit funky, but you certainly wouldn't have been excited for its economic prospects at that point. But certain projects can kickstart growth. The Commonwealth Games in particular had a huge impact on Manchester. Lots of money was poured in off the back of that. And really from there, it's not looked back. As we mentioned, multiple projects of huge sums of money going into the city. The BBC relocated there. That's happened because the city has been so good attracting investment, huge projects that have really made a difference to the area. And that's the thing, as you've seen with both of those case points, major regen, and I'll say it again, major regeneration, can kick-start economic growth and capital growth. It can make a difference if the projects are big enough.
And when it comes to capital growth, an important thing to be aware of is when the benefit of this kicks in. Because these projects take years and years and years to come to fruition, it's like, well, at what stage do you need to be getting involved and making a play on these things? Well, often you get it in two different batches. So when a project is initially announced, the area will get a boost and you'll see some capital growth as people move on that. Then it might just sort of stay where it is for a while, and then you'll get another kick again when the project is actually completed or is close to being completed. So a recent example of this is Crossrail in London. So Crossrail was first approved 10 years ago, 2007, and then construction began a couple of years later. When it was first announced, a lot of people looked at the map, saw things like, oh, Abbey Wood is going to get a major Crossrail station. I don't know where that is. And oh, it's really cheap there. I'm going to buy now and cash in on that. And people who did that have done extremely well. Then there were years in the middle where not a whole lot was happening and prices were just moving in line with the rest of the region, nothing specific to Crossrail. And now we're only about a year away from the first part of it being open. So you're seeing prices rise again. This is not so much speculative investment, but this is people moving in to actually take advantage of the services. So people going, oh, well, if I move here, I might have a bit of a pig of a commute for a year, but then I'll have Crossrail. So I'm going to get in now before everyone else realizes this, and prices go up again. So there's two reasons for capital growth. There's the initial speculation, and then there's the actual people coming in to realize the benefits of the project. And those do come at different times. So you don't have to be massively early. It's not the case that by the time it's announced, it's all over. You see that with shares. Basically, by the time a piece of news breaks, it's all priced in because everything moves so quickly. There are so many rumors and so much inside knowledge ahead of it happening. By the time you read about it in the paper the next day, it's all over. With projects like this, with property, it's not like that. You don't have to be going and combing through all the local plans to see what's coming up. You can wait. That first uplift isn't immediate. There's time for that. And even if you miss out on that, there's another one to come a few years down the line.
So, should you only be investing in areas with major projects going on for capital growth? No, that's not actually what we're saying. We're saying it's a way you can find capital growth and take advantage of it. But there are plenty of areas where there's not much happening in terms of regeneration projects or investment, but they don't need it because they're doing so well already. So, for example, look at York or Cambridge, two really affluent cities that are doing really well, that have attracted businesses, that offer great jobs, are lovely places to live and spend your time already. And yes, if you Google it, I'm sure there's projects there, but nothing on the scale we've mentioned. But places like that just don't need it. So don't be alarmed if you are looking at an area and you can't see any major projects happening. If it's a good area already, then that's fine. Don't worry. What we're saying is be careful of which projects you pay attention to. Not all projects are created equal. Not will all have an impact. But if you focus on the right ones, there's definitely upside to take advantage of.
Okay, so resource of the week coming up in just a minute. But before that, we always like to take time in the show to acknowledge a wonderful person who's left us a wonderful review. So, Rob, who have we got this week?
Okay, our first wonderful person is BitLuki. who says, Rob and Rob are fantastic, thank you. Very easy to relate to and provide a great balance of chat, life lessons and the nitty-gritty. This is the first podcast I've listened to, starting in October 2016, and I've been inspired to find other podcasts as well as kickstart my property investments. And now I have a clear strategy and plan for the next few years, thanks to their amazing work. Thank you. And time for another quick one. Charlie CJ says, I've only recently got into podcasts, and this is by far my favourite. Rob and Rob do a really great job of getting the information across, as well as creating excitement in property investment. Thanks, guys. Well, thank you to you both, you wonderful people.
All right, resource of the week time. This is a great one coming up for Christmas. Thank you to Dan for sending this one in. This is honey.
Been around a while, that, hasn't it, Rob? We're getting a bit thin on the ground with resources. Next week, cucumbers.
That actually genuinely made me laugh. No, Rob, this is not the popular food stuff made by buzzing insects. This is a Chrome extension that helps you to find coupon codes. So I don't know if you do this. This is something that I always do. I'll be buying something online. On the checkout, there's always a coupon code box, and I don't have one. So I think, there's a coupon out there somewhere. I'll open a new tab. I'll go and do a bit of Googling, try to find the coupon, and eventually come back to what I was doing, having not found one. But Honey saves you from doing all that. It will go away and look for you, and it will automatically fill that box in if it finds a code. And so therefore it is basically free money. Not bad.
Not bad at all. I think that's what you call a no-brainer. Get it set up, it's free to do, and start saving money. Go for it. So next week's podcast is going to be a popular one. People love the resources of the week. They always feedback to us that they love that every week we dig out a resource that adds value to your life. Well, we plan to double down on that, triple down on it, or even more. We are looking at all of our favourite things of 2017, which will include our best resources, our best podcasts, our best books. Yes, it's all in there in a bumper episode, reviewing all the best stuff that we've come across this year.
It's going to be a good one. And we normally tell you at this point that before that, there'd be Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday. But there won't, because we've finished Ask Rob and Rob for this year. But don't worry, it's going to be back in 2018, and you can still get your questions in. So if you've got a question you want to ask for Ask Rob and Rob, just go to thepropertyhub.net/ask, and we will get straight on the case with that in January.
We will. But as you've heard, we are not missing the Thursday episodes. We'll do them all. We'll carry on. We've never missed a week yet. They've even gone out on Christmas Day. So we're not going to stop now. So make sure you join us next Thursday, where we'll be discussing our favourite things of 2017. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.